episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, SCS Nation, and welcome to yet another episode of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in all of true crime. And today, a show so good, it happens every Friday. Great Scott, it's your true crime Phil. What a creative name, because we've got Scott Duffey and Phil Waters, F-I-L. I came up with it one day, and it is stuck. Great Scott, it's your true crime Phil. We started with 52 people in the chat. We're now down to 50. I'm going to try to get us to one, see if I can pull that off. But people will come piling in. I can guarantee you that. Not for me, but for Phil and Scott. Lindsay Shea right here saying TGIF. Thank God it's Phil. Look at that. It's a new take on the old TGIF slogan. Look at this. We've jumped up to 101 in the chat. Don't ever call this a non-powerhouse podcast. I was asking people all along the way home for lunch today to tune into the podcast. I was honking at people saying, make sure you tune in to Surviving the Survivor at 5 p.m. Eastern time, because I'm going to have Scott and Phil on. And they honked back and said, yes, I'll be there. And so these people are filtering in right now. I don't even need to do the formal introduction. I'll do the informal introduction. He is America's most respected detective. He is what or who Magnum PI wishes he was. Tom Selleck, jealous of this man. It is Phil Waters, the founder, president, co-chairman of Kindred Spirits Investigations out of Houston and the Big Island of Hawaii. Look at this. Julie Frew giving us a happy birthday after. Soup yesterday was my big day, and today's the day after. Speaking of that, Sunday, we're doing a members only, the COE's idea, members only little birthday shindig with she, myself, the kids, maybe Carm will make a guest appearance, but she'll fill you in on that one. And then, of course, we've got Scott Duffey, Special Agent Scott Duffey, retired, formerly of the FBI, now of the University of Wilmington, the director of the Criminal Justice Institute at the University of Wilmington. Phil, out on the Big Island, what's your biggest worry these days? Is it corralling the feral chickens, or what are you worried about these days out there?
What am I worried about? Well,
yeah, I'm a Jewish guy, so I ask you what you're worried about. Yeah, I'm always worried.
I don't worry about much of anything. But
Phil, when you wake up in the morning, what is your first thought in the morning generally? Are you just grateful to be alive for another day? Do you say something to yourself in the morning? Because my first words are, what can I worry about today? And then I'm right into it. But what do you do? Because you're much more of a man, much more of an alpha male, and much more of an optimist. So how do you start your day, Phil?
Well, I start my day with getting out of bed, and the minute my feet hit the floor, that the devil says, crap, he's awake again.
That's interesting. And what do you say to the devil?
I don't say anything to him.
By the way, look, we just donated 5 survivors.
His worry. That's his worry, not mine.
Let me rephrase the question, Phil, as the talking ratio immediately goes in Phil's favor. Phil, what advice, as a religious man that you are, or non-religious, from whatever perspective, what advice would you give to an anxious Jewish guy who wakes up every morning worried? What would you say to me if I said, Phil, what advice do you have? Look at this. From Jenny Price, happiest of happy. Thank you so much, Jenny. Very unnecessary, but thank you very much. What advice would you give to Woody Allen or myself?
Woody Allen, well, it would be different advice.
Yeah.
But
Good point.
I embrace each day and love other people the way that you would expect to be loved. It's the golden rule. And yes, of course, for all of you, that's out of the Bible. I think that, for me, I pray without ceasing, and I try to be aware of other people, and if there's something I can offer to them that would encourage them, then that's what I would do. And so and you find those opportunities all along the day, and you just have to get after them once they present themselves to you.
You know, every Friday we go off the beaten path. We're going to get to Ashley Benefield and the so-called Black Swan trial in a moment. She took the stand this afternoon, and it was quite emotional. And hopefully the COE will get us a bite or two. Right on cue, welcome to our good friend Brianna, promoting that by saying Ashley Benefield trial is boring. Nevertheless, we will be discussing it in great detail.
Well, you know, its views are always topic driven. So
yeah. But
see how this resonates with the.
Literally, just as I say, we're getting into Ashley Benefield. My good friend Brianna CC. Ashley Benefield is boring, but we'll get to it. Don't worry. We've done more boring. Trust me. Scott, the shirt is a killer. Might make a new button from it. I don't know what that even means. What's on your shirt, Scott Duffey?
I'm not sure.
What does this mean? That
I think they're birds. I think they're seagulls. That's what I'm going with. Blue with.
You've worn that shirt before.
Sure. You know, it's I've been on now 1,000 times, so I don't.
It's like
Scott's wardrobe person is getting
deja vu all over again.
But what does this mean? Might make a new button from it. What does that mean?
Well, Joel, if you remember at CrimeCon, there were coming with these beautiful buttons, spattered about their bags.
Jenny, please make a new button and then fill us in. Nikki Cuds, my Jersey friend, Jersey for life. That's Jersey, the number 4 life with a hashtag in front of it. Scott, let me ask you the same question since I'm a narcissist and I'm thinking about myself and I'm selfish. I wake up worrying every single day of my life. There's literally not been a day where I don't wake up worried. And so I wake up tired every day. What advice would you have? You know, you go to talk to therapists and they give you some bullshit, nothing ever. You talk to a cab driver, you get the real answer. So I'm thinking if I speak to a retired FBI agent, what advice do you have for me about this, Scott Duffey? By the way, before you answer, hold that wrist of yours up. You were in one of those 1980 braided bracelets that everyone wore in the 80s.
Yeah.
That's cool. Where'd you get that?
My darling wife brought it.
That's awesome.
May.
Do you remember that everyone wore those in the 1980s?
Everyone, it was popular.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll start an 80s fad again.
Yeah, I love it. But Scott, what is your advice to me?
Do you have a couch? Lay down. Let's I think worry is just a part of life, and just it tells you you're living. It tells you you got a lot on your plate. So I'm going to look at the positive of all that. You can worry without necessarily getting anxious and your stomach tied up in knots. So just mark them down and create a checkbox, and then try to tackle one of those worries at a time. First and foremost, rate them, prioritize them.
Interesting.
See which one sends you like way off, that your day is done.
Do you do this, Scott? Do you have a chart of your worries? Do you do this? Or you just like, do you really think this would work if I actually made a chart and numbered them?
Well, that might create another worry then for you, because you'll probably worry about 1, 2, 3. No, but in my head, I just go through them and try to figure out which ones are good, which ones I like. I think everybody out there paying bills is a worry, but you do it, and it's
so
done.
Let me go. So one of my big worries, of course, is financial, because I like to worry about money. Mm-hmm. I mean, when that happens to you, and I do consider both of you alpha males for what you did. And Phil's got multiple Ferraris, so he's not the best guy to ask. But Scott Duffey, when you begin to worry about money, let's say you've got a big bill that you're blindsided with, what do you say to yourself? What do you say to yourself?
What do I say to myself?
Because I'll tell you what I say to myself. Wow, I can't take care of my kids. I can't take care of my wife. Everything is
Yeah.
imploding. The world is caving in. The ocean, there's going to be a tsunami. My house is going to get flooded. And I just go on, and the list just goes on and on and on. And I just can't stop. So how do you stop the stream of consciousness of worry? And then I promise you we'll get into true crime. Phil is rubbing his goatee like Sigmund Freud. But go ahead, Scott.
Rob a bank.
You know how to do that. I don't. I'd be too nervous. This maybe says it best. Look right here. Joel, you have issues. I thought Scott was going to say don't worry, but he said worrying is part of life. So now I feel my worry is that I'm not worrying enough. But anyway, some people think this is shtick, by the way, and I want to assure you that I do worry. You know, I used to listen to Howard Stern. I kind of blame him real quick for ruining my life because it's hard to believe, but when I was a sophomore in high school, that guy was already on radio. And back then he was on at 3:00 in the afternoon on WNBC. And all he did was worry and complain. And I loved that guy. He was like my idol. But then I realized later in life that he kind of ruined me because I absorbed a lot of his angst, I think. So I blame Howard Stern for everything. But there was a bigger point to this, and now I can't remember what it was. But Phil, let me get back to you. Same thing. I mean, even though you do have 2 Ferraris, you're no different. You put on your pants the same way. You could get hit with a big insurance bill in the Big Island for your 2nd or 3rd or 5th home. What do you do when that happens? What do you say to yourself? I mean, there's a point where you can say, God will take care of me. God will take care of it. But you also have to be practical in life. So let's just stick with this. Let's say you get hit with a big financial bill and you might be concerned. What do you say to yourself?
I pay it.
Scott Duffey, why can I not be as rational as Phil? Why is that impossible?
I would say that's the top of his checklist. Pay the bill. It's done. It's over. Pass.
Well, I mean, if I get a big bill that I mean, I'm the source of why that bill is being sent to me. So I don't go to anything blind. I want to be prepared for what I'm having to have done and what it's going to cost, and then I will, I'll try to get the best price I can get, of course. But when the bills come due, I pay them.
Yeah. Carmela Corleone was just on the screen. COE, I just forwarded you an email. I think we've shown it before, but at the end of the show, we will show you Carmela Corleone, not to be confused with my Carm. She is a nude cat, a hairless cat. And Ida Shaw says, how is that working? It works out really badly for me because the fact that I am constantly worrying is very exhausting. That's why I'm always exhausted. But anyway, we'll move off of this. Joel, you can't make this up. You have all the signs. Yeah. This is Rachel, the therapist. Rachel, no offense. My dad was a psychiatrist, and I'm working on surviving the psychiatrist as we speak. My mom's a social worker. I'll tell you the things that help me the most in this order. The gym. Nothing helps me more than the gym. And speaking to retired FBI agents and speaking to cab drivers, or Uber drivers. They seem to have the best advice by far of anyone. So anyway, Phil is shaking his head. It's time to move on to true crime here. Have you heard, Phil and Phil, have you been following the Ashley Benefield trial? Is it something you've been following?
No.
All right, guys, it's been a good show today. The COE is hosting Friends. I asked her to pull up some sound of, she just took the stand. Since you haven't followed it, let me fill everybody in. And I'll be honest, we've been covering the Donna Adelson impending trial. I have been watching Ashley Benefield when I can, including today when she took the stand. But she is 32. Her husband is 30 years older than her. And Phil Waters, she admitted to fatally shooting, you heard me right, to shooting her 58-year-old husband. He is a Navy veteran. named Doug Benefield. And we have this is Ashley right here, attractive young woman. And it is the so-called Black Swan trial, named after the movie Black Swan, which I never saw, which I presume is about a wife that murders her husband. And this is her and her husband during better days. And there you go. The two, something just fell. The two got married, Phil Waters. They met in 2016 at a Republican fundraiser, and 2 weeks later, they're married and living happily ever after until 2020, when he shot and killed. You're shaking your head right there. So let me just stop and ask you, are you skeptical of a marriage after 2 weeks? And it's really hard to know a person in 2 weeks. Do you think that this was a problem from the get-go with this couple, that they just jumped into this, not to mention the 30-year age difference?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is a relationship that's already got some challenges to it right off the bat. So whatever it was that love at first sight, animal magnetism, whatever it was that brought them together at the beginning, if they're at some sort of political gathering, so they're of like-minded in that manner, which can cause a lot of emotion. And so 2 weeks and you're getting married, and she's old enough to be your daughter. I mean, that's to me not my cup of tea. I guess good for him if he was able to lasso a young, attractive woman. And but and who knows, I don't know anything about her. I don't know anything about him in terms of their backgrounds, but other than what I've read in the article that you sent. And so I mean, does she have a daddy complex, and that's what brought her into the fold? I mean, who knows? I mean, this is a real interesting. The psychological autopsy on her would be very interesting, and so then I've read what eventually transpired, and I don't know. I just think it was. I don't know that it was going to end up the way it did end up. If that was kind of from the beginning kind of a thing, but I just don't. I've seen very few marriages like this. I mean, they didn't all end up in a murder, but that are, relatively successful. And there's been a couple. I mean, that you can point out, but I don't know. This just seems to be. It sounds like it melted down fairly quickly.
Yeah, Phil, what percentage of your gazillion homicide cases that you investigated, roughly what percentage were domestic between husband and wife, would you say?
Oh gosh. I'd have to go through my logbook and kind of look at them individually to find out. I think I wouldn't say that they were
talking 10%, 35%. What do you think?
I really don't know. I really couldn't give you a number. I don't recall that being the prevalent scene. I think it was more of a mix, more of a mix of things: ag robberies, domestic violence, sexual assaults. It kind of gang involved homicides. Kind of ran the gamut. Drug deals gone bad. I just don't. I think I had a hodgepodge. But that is an interesting question. I will look at my logbook and see if I can.
I've stumped Uncle Phil. So someone just asked if I worry that I don't worry enough, and it's the exact opposite. I worry that I worry too much, and it's the exact opposite. I worry that I don't worry enough, and my worry right now, the COE, as we all know, she is the backbone of this show. By the way, I just had lunch with Steve Cohen. He's the other backbone of the show. But the COE lives a much different life than me. She never worries about anything. I think I've mentioned on the show, she will fall asleep faster than Fred or Ethel. like Fred and Ethel get in bed with us and they're asleep, but I look over and the COE is asleep before them with her tongue dangling out of her mouth, just like Fred and Ethel. So my worry right now is the sound bites that I was asking for are never going to arrive. And it's very hard to host a show without any elements. So we're going to talk a lot today, and I'm going to fill people in with details. But that is my current worry. I'll go back to worrying about money right after this and other things in a moment. Scott Duffey, this is interesting. This trial literally just started on Monday. Today is Friday. Jury selection was over by Tuesday. The trial, thank you. The trial started Tuesday. The state rested yesterday, and the defense has the witness on the stand today. This is a self-defense, a murder case. Is it unusual to you that in 3 days the state rested and the defense already had the person at the center of this on the witness stand? It seems like lightning quick to me, considering I've seen some murder trials. I mean, you got OJ went 9 months, and it seems like the shortest will go 2 weeks. This is probably going to be over Monday or Tuesday, if not before.
Yeah, no, if you only have but a few witnesses and she's taken the stand, so you have the suspect, the charged suspect, who's now both witness for the prosecution, right, or for the defense, and then of course on cross. So it comes down to, hey, she's admitted what she's done. There's no whodunit. You probably have a few family witnesses that will speak to her character and then speak to the victim's character, and whatever police reports exist, I imagine, if any exist, for prior police response to domestics. And it sounds like it's the prosecution did what they did. They putting it forward and truly allowing the jury to make the decision, as opposed to, hey, there's enough evidence to support this was a defense killing, and no charges. So it doesn't surprise me that they've moved very quickly, put their case forward. They're kind of meeting their standard. Hey, we felt the need to put the case forward, and so thereby we don't have a whole lot else to draw out the testimonies of anybody. So no, I agree. It will be over early mid next week.
Once again, Scott Duffey, unfazed, unsurprised. I'm totally surprised by the fact that it went so quick, but he's rational. Tamara, 3 interesting. Go ahead, Phil Waters.
Let me say something here.
Please.
The examples you're using was OJ, and what was the other one?
I mean, I know OJ is the biggest exception,
No,
but
well,
even like
OJ,
yeah.
and what was the other one?
I don't know. I mean, just in general, I feel like.
Well, here's the deal. Here's the
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah.
Those are whodunits. This one is a smoking gun. So,
well, this is. I'm going to ask you about that. This is interesting.
Hang on. So she admittedly, she admittedly did this. I mean, it's not a big surprise. So she has her defense is it was in self-defense, and so forth and so on. So, as Scott said, the fact that there are very few witnesses, and most of these witnesses are peripheral people that had some text messages exchanged and some discussion and so forth and so on. I think his cousin, Benefield's cousin, is one of these people, and maybe one other person. So there's not a whole lot of witnesses here, and she's admitted to doing it. So this is a short trial because there's not a lot of evidence here to present. This is just whether or not she was justified in doing what she did. And I guess when the DAs looked at the evidence, they determined that it was not self-defense. And it was now I have read the arguments that the prosecution is trying to prove that no, this was something that she decided that she was going to be a single mother and fighting with him and about the custody and the daughter and this and that and this and that. Knowing what I have read, that's going to be, I think they've got a kind of a rough road ahead of them in trying to prove that. So, but that's just based on what I read in that article and the evidence that they have talked about in the article. So,
I mean, that's a great point, obviously, is that she has admitted to this killing, but whether it's murder or self-defense, and I'm going to ask Phil about stand your ground in a moment, because that's how it started off. But some interesting comments here from Tamara. His first wife, meaning this guy Benefield, divorced him after 6 months due to domestic violence. The second wife passed due to an undiagnosed heart issue, and I think the intimation there, maybe he had something to do with it. We don't know. Roses, I'm not cultured. My mother would scream at me. Black Swan refers, I've heard of the Black Swan Ballet by Tchaikovsky. I've heard of Tchaikovsky. They made a movie based on this called Black Swan. It features the original nice swan and the black shady sheep swan, followed by this, Phil Waters and Scott Duffey. Just a word of warning for all the old men out there. These young girls are not after you, Scott, because they love you or find you sexually appealing. I take umbrage with that. I think that Scott Duffey and Phil Waters are both sex symbols in our day and age. Like I said before, alpha men and former law enforcement. What woman would not be physically attracted to Scott Duffey and or Phil Waters? I don't know of any.
I feel like there's something more to that statement.
I'll leave it at that. But Doug was the same profession as her father and about the same age. I would say there might be some daddy issues getting into Sigmund Freud. So Phil Waters, let me just lay some more stuff out here as I continue to work with zero elements. A data forensics detective with Manatee County Sheriff, that's the jurisdiction handling this. He was the final person on the witness stand for the state yesterday. And he laid out text messages because this was supposed to be domestic violence. Tempers were really heated in the moment when this was happening. And just hours before the shooting, he now displayed text messages between Doug and his wife, Ashley. And 2:52, just a few hours before, she laughs at an image and she responds with, "Ha ha, OMG." And he responds with, "Trucker on the way." And that's at 5:32 p.m. And then goes on, the prosecution goes on to ask this digital forensic expert, 5:32 p.m. was the last communication between these two? And the digital forensics expert says, yes, I believe so. And the point of all this, Phil Waters, is that it is a very affable exchange. There's no sense of domestic violence. There is nothing going on. And then just a very short time later, she is said to have killed him. How important or not important are these text messages in your eyes as a former homicide detective? I mean, how fast can something change from sort of jovial text messages to now I'm going to kill you?
Well, I've had cases that, I had a case that it was a domestic violence case, matter of fact. And the husband killed his wife, claimed it was a suicide. And I went through 5,000 text messages on her phone. And the thing about text messages, in just a general sense, it's very hard to understand the tone or the context unless there is some specific word that's being used that expresses what that may be. And so these sound pretty benign. I mean, doesn't sound like anything was going on, but once they get to the house, just as you've alluded to, Joel, these things, they're very emotional. What's going on? This meltdown of the marriage and the child involved and all this other stuff. I mean, that turn on a dime, and all of a sudden you've got some words being exchanged. And what we don't know is, was there some purpose in her getting him over there to do what he was doing for the purpose of causing a problem, saying something to him, pushing a button that knew this thing would get started, and then that gave her the opportunity to do what she did. So and those are things we don't know. And I don't think you're going to garner that out of these text messages, at least the ones that we've seen.
Yeah, they seem kind of a little nebulous to me. By the way, my worry right now is I can't extend my legs properly because of the configuration of this desk. And if I have a blood clot and die in the middle of the show,
well, that'll be historic.
That would be historic. That would be the remember David Bloom? He was a journalist. He was covering the war in Iraq. He was a real rising star at NBC News, and I was bitter about that. But anyway, he went to cover the war in Iraq, and he was riding around in a tank constantly. He got a pulmonary embolism, died. May he rest in peace. Very sad story. Sherry's News. Watching Ashley on trial today reminded us all in attendance that Ashley was doing an Amber Heard profile. Sounded like crying, but no tissues. And then this comment, and then we're actually going to play a piece of sound. Ashley had already been married and divorced by age 24, then marries a man 30 years older, wanted a child, not the man, tried to get him in trouble many times, but it's all in her head, nutcase. And I think there is possibly some veracity to this. But here is Ashley Benefield from today testifying for the defense, for her own defense team, taking the stand. We'll get Phil and Scott's take on the other side.
Was at your home?
He came over to help load some of the larger items that my mom and I had kind of pre-staged in the garage into the U-Haul truck.
And were there any discussions between the two of you about the order that these things should be placed in the back of the truck?
Yes, we had discussed that my things would be going in last, right at the front, so they would be easy to get out first. At one point, he had me help him load one of the larger pieces into the back of the U-Haul truck. And when I was up in the truck with him, I realized that everything had been all like mixed together and it was no longer separated. And I pointed that out to him, and he got really offended and upset. He said, "It shouldn't be your stuff, my stuff, your house, my house."
This is 4 minutes. I'm going to stop it right there. We've got two experts in human observation. Scott Duffey, you and Phil Waters are masters of this. Maybe Phil Waters has a little more experience. What do you make of her demeanor on the stand just up to this point? Again, this is 4 minutes. She's talking about what's leading up to the death of her ex or her husband, who's now no longer with us. I mean, what do you just make of her general demeanor? She's got to be coached here, but this looks to me, looks very forced. What's it look like to you?
It's hard for me to gauge when I don't have time that I've seen, and so it's easy for me to make a judgment on somebody's twitching, moving around their eyes, tears, lack of tears, whatnot, when I've had some time to spend with somebody, talking to them about things that have nothing to do with the crime that they're talking to me about, so I can get a real true gauge of their bodily cues. And then when I go into what I call provocative indicator questions and so forth, so everything from the attorney will be those indicator questions, and then the body's going to respond kind of naturally. It's hard to hold those things back, and that's where I'm kind of making mental and physical notes that I'm going to come back to. Just with this clip alone, it's tough for me to say, and the reason is because domestic violence, you can get, whether it's there or not there, I don't know enough about her to see, is she a victim in the first place, that where there's just natural, plenty of police reports or some sort of prior interview to show, yeah, you were a victim domestic violence, etc. So with that being said, it's hard for me to see what she's doing other than, is it an act or is it just her, her life of, I would really have to drill down on this whole background of her. And so ultimately it would be tough for me to say she's lying there because she did this or did that. I'm a big fan of, hey, if somebody is crying and it's a truly, they're reaching back to historic moments of things that they've suffered through, and so thereby the tears come through, and then of course when the tears are not there but they should be there, yeah, just in that 30 seconds you played, yeah, it'd be tough for me to say what she's doing.
By the way, Izzy Marielle says the second wife was abused also. That came into evidence today, and there are reports or evidence that was admissible that this husband, Doug Benefield, would sometimes get angry and just shoot his weapon, his firearm, into the ceiling. From Spacey Dove, look at this, Scott. Hi, Joel and Scott. I came over and chatted with you both and the COE at CrimeCon. Joel, you graciously signed 2 books for me as we were all waiting the Chad Daybell jury decision. What a world. Happy to have you here, Spacey Dove, and appreciate you coming to say hello for sure. Let's continue on here with the great Phil Waters, get his take. Again, this is Ashley Benefield on the stand today.
Was there a particular demand he made at that time?
He said I needed to start acting like a wife.
Tell us at that point how you chose to deal with him.
I tried to change the subject. I could see how upset he was getting. So I wanted to kind of alleviate that.
And how was Doug reacting to your efforts to do that?
He was getting more upset and aggressive and threatening.
Do you attempt to avoid confrontation with him?
Yes.
What do?
I was trying to get him to leave. I kept suggesting that maybe we should be done, saying I was tired. We should just wrap it up for the day.
And what was Doug's reaction to that effort?
He heard me, but he completely disregarded what I was saying.
Ashley, would you tell us if there came a time shortly thereafter where there was physical contact between the two of you?
Yes.
Tell us about it.
We were in the living room, and as he came up to me, instead of walking past me, he walked right into me, like a body check. He bumped me.
His shoulder to your shoulder?
Yes.
And describe for us, if you can, the force of the bump.
It caught me off guard. I almost fell. I stumbled.
All right. So now she's talking about how after this loading of the U-Haul truck with her belongings, presumably to move out and separate, he says that she's got to act like a wife. Phil Waters, a lot of comments in the chat that she's, that the obvious one is domestic violence is such a serious issue, should never be minimized. But some people do feel like maybe she's using that in this particular case. So I just want to make sure that the DV aspect of this is not minimized. But how do you read her with your multitude of expertise in the area of reading people's language? Right now, as it is paused, she's just literally staring into nothingness.
Well, I'm gonna go along with Scott's thinking here. I don't know that we've seen. I'm comfortable enough seeing what we've seen. I don't have any gauge. I mean, we're seeing what we're seeing now in this testimony, but in terms of what she started out as on that stand and now where she is, I mean, I'm not sure that, making observations that this part of this testimony would be terribly accurate. I'd like to see what's going on with her hands. It looks like there's some movement down there. It looks like
What's a good tell with hands, Phil? What's a good tell with hands?
Well, I want to see what she's doing. Is she a cleaner? Is she picking stuff off of her clothing? You know, we call them cleaners. You know, where they suddenly get an idea that they need to remove the lint from their clothes. She may be wringing her hands. She might have them together, clasped, and twiddling her thumbs. She's not made any movement that I've seen toward her face. The only thing we've seen with her hands is kind of this demonstration of him bumping into her and that kind of thing. The only thing I would say about her demeanor is, and again, not having a gauge, she's been told, I'm sure, that she needs to be humble on the stand. But I'm not, again, not having a gauge. I'm not sure if she may be overdoing it a little bit, but it's the things that she's describing. Of course, the questions on, if I'm the prosecutor, I'm going to ask is if this thing was happening and there have been these incidents of family violence prior to this, and knowing when he gets angry, presumably, that this can get way out of control very quickly, and especially when he makes the contact, if that in fact happened, why isn't she on the phone calling 911? Because at least what we know about what she's describing her experience with this guy, with her husband, is that, you know, he's and there apparently is some sort of documentation. I did read in the article about him firing a pistol into the ceiling and that kind of thing. And if she has all that knowledge, why are we, you know, she knows how quickly this can dissolve in a disaster. So let's get on the phone and call 911. So I don't know. There's just a whole lot of things we don't know. And, you know, it's the old adage that dead men tell no tales. So she's the only one that's able to explain what happened. And what we have about him is all the peripheral stuff that's past, that things that would appear that maybe there is some truth to what she's describing. But of course, you know, I mean, where did she get the gun? Why was the gun available? Why not call 911 instead of picking the gun up? So a lot of questions. And again, I'm going to kind of defer to Scott's kind of being neutral about making any specific observations.
Yeah,
based on this.
And by the way, this is coming to us obviously courtesy of our friends like Anjanette Levy at Law and Crime, Terry Austin, among others. Ida Shaw, JD, and then we'll listen to the rest of the sound. But Scott, this is a really good point, a smart point. Ashley was fabricating a lot of stuff, but I do not doubt that she was abused. I think it was mutual abuse, followed here by Mom of the Year. As a mental health professional, DV victims present in many ways. It's hard to say what is genuine here. But the point I think that Ida Shaw is making, it's possible, right? It's not mutually exclusive. Like Scott, it's possible she was abused, but is also either embellishing or was not being abused in that particular moment, or just using it, for lack of a better term, to her advantage as a self-defense claim for her defense. But I mean, is it possible that both are true? That's the bottom line question, that she was being abused, but maybe she wasn't being abused when she pulled the trigger. How would you kind of dissect the two? Like, could you, in a court of law, are you allowed to say, well, it's just been collective abuse over X amount of time, and so she just decided to pull the trigger? Or does it have to be a specific reason in that moment in time where she defends herself by pulling that trigger?
Yeah, from the stand your ground point of view, I've always been confused with that because I've seen it like where was the infamous and the name is escaping me, and it was a Floridian.
What case is this?
This is going back to where I believe it was an individual who was chasing after another. and they did-
Trayvon.
yeah, Trayvon Martin, right, which
Okay.
caught the attention, and then there was a case not long after, where again a stand your ground defense, and the shooter was convicted. So stand your ground is not something I'm used to. I'm used to what I have in my state, and then of course in the Fed system, which is if there's going to be a self-defense, you really have to show that imminent danger to your life, and so ultimately, I believe my life is imminently, and that is it doesn't mean it has to be a second, but it is imminently, and that I have no recourse. And so thereby whatever that weapon of choice then that I have at my right there, that I use it. And so this is where it gets tough, to where that imminent danger, as opposed to stand your ground. Hey, you don't have to. And if somebody is forcing you to the point that you believe, if I don't stand my ground, my life could be in danger. So it's a little bit different. And I other than seeing it in news type cases, I don't have any experience in it. But I will say, for regarding some of the points here, let's say that there is that, as Ada Shaw says, there is that mutual abuse. There are two very different but strong personalities, where there are two similar backgrounds of, hey, there are relationship issues, and relationship issues then resort to some sort of anger, violence, etc. But with regards to her, and so law enforcement also has had numerous discussions with their district attorney who's prosecuting this, to say, these are the facts. This is what we have. We have her confessing. However, she says it was this or that. So those discussions are going back and forth, to ultimately where the decision is made by prosecution that it did not rise to that level. But I would say, with regards to the possibility that law enforcement and the prosecution is looking at, if these statements are true, whether they're communicated to somebody else by text, email, or something where they are her words, and she can't say she didn't say them, she might change the context. But you have a witness to say, yeah, she often said this, did this, sent me text to say that she wanted to be, as we are hearing, a single mom, that she just wanted this guy in her life. But for a moment, if those are true, and she is she's fantasizing, so similar to a murderer who is fantasizing about it, and to such a point that it is escalating to an actionable plan, and then of course the homicide, it raises that intent. I could say the same here. If she's idealizing that, she's fantasizing about that, and there is some level of proof that they can administer as evidence in a court, then is it possible that this moment that she's kind of created in her mind is that time? And so, the first thing is, her mind is thinking, hey, go ahead and kill this person, because you have thought about it. So that's where she's moving in that realm, as opposed to You've taken a life. And was that the last and only resort in order to save your own life? Or is this something that you've idealized, you fantasized, and now that moment, an argument has arisen to us, and remember, the jury's making that decision. Hey, was I in a position to where I argued and then felt like, is this going to result in a fight or something? And so ultimately she makes the decision to kill him, and so thereby it is a crime as opposed to a self-defense. That's where I'm seeing some of perhaps her reaction is that, and Phil brought up a good point. Where was this gun at the moment? And what did she have to do in order to get it, as opposed to, I haven't heard anything about
Apparently
he had a gun and it wrestled.
Apparently she had 2 weapons. She also had a concealed carry license. Where it was physically at the moment, I don't know. Ida Shaw, who's a lawyer, says Ashley is using the DV abused spouse doctrine, so no imminence required, I guess, meaning to be in imminent danger necessarily. It's the pattern of abuse that has led to the unaliving. That is interesting. That's a whole understanding of the law unto itself. JL, he meaning Doug Benefield, wrote a letter to his own priest admitting all the abusive behavior. I'd not heard that. Let's play through the rest of this. This is obviously a long chunk, and then we'll get Phil's take. I'd like to get his explanation of, because originally they filed a stand your ground claim, and that was rejected. So I just want to ask Phil about the kind of the difference between stand your ground and self-defense here. But let's watch the rest of this.
How was he acting at that point?
He was clearly hostile. He was mumbling under his breath and was glaring at me.
What was your concern?
I could see that it was escalating, and I didn't want him to blow up at me.
Was there a second instance of physical contact?
Yes.
Tell us about that, please.
We were in the garage, and it was very much like the living room. I had just suggested strongly that I wanted to be done for the day. And he, as he came up to me, he walked right into me. Again, body checked me.
Finally, was there a third instance of contact?
Yes.
What happened?
We were in the hallway, and we were coming opposite directions towards each other, and he had a box. And as he walked up to me, he looked me in the eye, and he drove the corner of the box up into me.
Where?
My side.
Indicating on your right side.
Yes, sir.
In the hip area?
Yes, sir.
What was the result of that?
Scratching. It burned.
Yes, sir.
And that's the end of that bite. The COE just loaded another one in there. Phil, just if your takes changed at all, but can you just explain to the layperson the difference here between stand your ground and self-defense, and what's going on here?
Well, I don't know what the stand your ground stuff. The simple explanation of that is, and I dealt with these types of cases, self-defense, the use of a firearm or whatever implement to whatever weapon to defend a person, if you want to call it stand your ground or whatever. You're not, the whole stand your ground thing is the thing where you feel justified in not fleeing, that things are happening so quickly in front of you that the only way for you to protect yourself is to, quote, stand your ground and use deadly force in some way. Now, it's pretty simple, at least in Texas. And I think it's maybe phrased differently, but pretty much the same intent, that if you are in fear of death or serious bodily injury, you are allowed to use deadly force. It's pretty simple. And what needs to happen is, if that's what you do, you have to be able to articulate why you felt that. And it applies to police officers. It applies to everybody. And so I'll tell you what I would like to have seen is the interview of her after the incident occurred. That's the interview I would like to see. Because this stuff we're seeing on the stand right now is coached. It's pretty much scripted, because I can tell you, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying this is the way trials are conducted. So her lawyer, they've sat down and they have prepped her for her testimony. And there's nothing underhanded about that. That's just the way things are done. Now, and again, we have a thing here where she's admitted to have done it, and she's trying to explain why she did what she did. Now, the only thing I'm picking up here, and there's a lot of people that are going to say, she's got to be believed because she's a woman. Well, that's nonsense. So that is absolute nonsense. You are just accepting a story without any evidence. In my world as a detective, I let evidence lead me where I need to be. It's always a journey for the truth. I don't accept anybody's story as face value at the beginning of any particular investigation. And I don't care what flavor they are. Doesn't matter to me. I listen to each person's testimony, their statements, and then I have to look at the evidence and see where does their testimony or their statement fit into the evidence that I see. So this business about, she's typical, she's this, she's that, I don't know that. And none of these people saying that know that. So what we're seeing here is the trial where she's trying to explain what happened in that house that day and why she shot her husband. Now, having said all that, I would say this about her testimony. She's now described 3 different incidents of physical contact with her in this time frame. And we don't know what the time frame here is, at least I don't. We don't know if it happened 5 minutes apart, if they happened a minute apart, if they happened 15 minutes apart, 20 minutes apart, because they're moving stuff back and forth into this U-Haul. So I have a timeline for this stuff. So everything we're offering here is conjecture on just what she's saying. And I go back to this description of multiple physical contact in this business about moving stuff to the U-Haul. And so again, my question is, why not call the police? And why not call 911 at that point, especially if you have experienced domestic violence with this particular man in the past? If you have a sense, talking about her, of where this is going, then why not get on the phone and let's get this under control now? And these are the questions I'm having as a detective in this thing. I'm not casting any judgment. I'm not saying she's lying. I'm not saying any of that. These are just questions in watching her testimony that I have if I was the detective. So that's what I would like to see, would be the initial interview right after this incident occurred.
This is very interesting because you see not Sir Ray Davies, Ashley Benefield is a victim, and then the next comment down, I don't believe a word she's saying, which you have to think the jury, you'd have to think that the jury has got to be in a similar position if STS Nation is. Let me just fill you in on some facts surrounding this case, and we'll watch this other piece of sound, and then eventually we'll move on. Both sides here, Scott Duffey and Phil, admit that the marriage between each other was just broken beyond repair. It was September 27, 2020. So it's 4 years ago almost, when police responded to this 911 call at the home of Ashley's mother in Lakewood Ranch, Florida. Doug is found lying on the bedroom floor, shot 3 times. She tells police he tried to attack her. As we said earlier, they were married just 2 weeks after meeting at a GOP fundraiser. The daughter now is 6 years old. He helped her build this ballet studio. She's an aspiring ballerina. That fell apart and flopped. There was an affidavit, Scott Duffey, that's interesting, and I'll read it directly. Based on entry wounds on Douglas, it does not appear that he was facing Ashley when she began shooting. It also does not appear that Douglas had taken any kind of defensive or combative stance. He was not found to have any weapons on his person or near him. What about that, Scott Duffey? The fact that he hadn't taken any kind of defensive or combative stance, that the implication is he just didn't see it coming. What does that do to her defense of self-defense?
Well, so that's very important. And the forensic evidence with regards to entry. So did you say, Joel, that none of the 3 appeared to be while he's facing her?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably.
Big part of an affidavit, right?
Yeah. Big problem. And then, of course, you're using evidence. So let's just say, for argument's sake, all of what she is saying, previous abuses and the current abuse, are true. But what happened in that moment? That's where it comes down to. And if law enforcement and the evidence is there communicating itself to law enforcement to say, was he in the process of attacking her? Yes, she says. Okay, that's a statement. Is that statement backed up by the evidence? No. If you have an expert that comes in and says, no, the wounds are to the back or whatever, showing that he is perhaps running away, to where, is it going to be he's coming for her and then he says, oh my gosh, you got a gun, so I don't have a gun, so I'm going to now get out, and she fires 3 rounds. That I would say, if that's true, the evidence shows that he did either an about face because she leveled the weapon at him. He's like, I'm out of here. And then does she shoot while he's in the process of fleeing? All that I think goes into the fact in support of the prosecution case. To show, did she have the right to kill him? That's ultimate. She killed him. She admitted killing him. Mm-hmm. So did she have the right to kill him? And if that threat is gone, then the right is gone.
Mandy Strong here. She ended Doug's life. She tried every other trick in the book and failed. Joint custody was being ordered. She lured him to his death. Then the channel F here. Doug was there because Ashley invited him to help her pack up the U-Haul. Let me go through some things over the last 3 days. The prosecutor in this case alleges that Ashley wanted her husband out of her life, and she would, quote unquote, stop at nothing. Early in her pregnancy, per the state, she wanted to be a single mother. She did not want the father of this child to have any visitation. Ashley was unsuccessful in the courts. At the end, she just goes ahead, according to the prosecution, and shoots him, simply claiming self-defense. As you just heard, they were living separately at the time, and he apparently she invited him over. And then the state goes on also to suggest the trajectory of the gun disproves self-defense, just because of the way the bullets entered the body. And the state here, with a direct quote, you'll see that this was a custody battle. that this mother was going to win at all costs. Meanwhile, of course, the defense going in a completely different direction, saying that he was abusive and intimidating. The defense quote, "I want you to note how he's built for a 58-year-old man." I guess he was big and strong. "I'm going to have some strong words," the defense says, about Douglas Benefield, the alleged victim in this case. And I say alleged victim because he was anything but that. The evidence is going to show that Douglas Benefield was a very disturbed man, obsessed with his wife. Phil Waters, we're getting to something that I want to get your response to. He would fire the handgun, per the defense. He would fire his own handgun into the ceiling of their kitchen on occasion to stop Ashley from talking. He also threw a loaded gun at Ashley. This is where he crosses the line, and I'm just enraged. Bill Waters and Scott Duffey. He punches their dog in the face so hard that the dog was knocked unconscious. Let's stop right there. Phil Waters, I don't know what I would do in real life if I ever saw someone punch a dog and knock the dog out, but that is what the defense alleges, on top of punching walls. Is all of this so much or too much that no matter which way you slice it, he had it coming? It was just boiling over and she couldn't take it another second? Or you stick with the Scott Duffey defense that you got to look at this particular moment in time where it appears that he was shot in the back, either trying to retreat or unaware that these bullets were heading his way? But in particular, Phil Waters, your response to having knocked out a dog, allegedly.
Well, I would have treated him in kind. So that answers the dog question. But look, we're taking bits and pieces of a big picture here and trying to glean little separate opinions about those little places, and that's what people do when all they do is look at parts of it. So this is in every homicide investigation, you always have to put a timeline together of when did these things occur, what was the context in which they occurred, what was the participation of both people. I mean, this guy shooting a gun into the ceiling, I'm not saying it's right, but it didn't happen in a vacuum. So something happened, and we don't know what she said or did or attacked him with on occasion. Now, did I read somewhere in the article that you sent me that he reversed a vasectomy? Or is that
STS Nation, help us out there. I think I read that as well, but I don't recall, to be honest. STS Nation,
well, I
let us know about
that I read regarding this case, or if it was something else. But
I hope that wasn't Scott Duffey telling you that, but go ahead.
You know, the thing is, look, and the one observation I think everybody can agree with, this was a relationship that was doomed for disaster. Look
at this right here. He had a vasectomy and had reversed it as she wanted a child.
Okay.
I didn't even know you could reverse a vasectomy. That sounds very uncomfortable, but go on.
Well, I wouldn't do the first one anyway. So, yeah. But nobody's getting near.
That's like tying your shoes and then untying it from a double knot.
I mean, just raining out. Personally, nobody's getting near my boys with a freaking blade. I can tell you that. Anyway, are
we recording?
Yeah, another show, another T-shirt. No one's getting my boys, but near my boys.
I'm just gonna say here that for all those people that are making decisions, offering their opinions about this case based on little snippets, you thank the Lord you're not in investigations, because you're not doing what detectives do. Now I get it. I mean, everybody's got their own opinion, like other parts of our body. But I'm just, more things that are coming out here, and just in your telling these things, Joel, this where the rounds hit him, that is freaking huge.
Mm-hmm.
look, those detectives went to the autopsy, and they're going to glean a lot of information from what that body tells them. And if he's got, did you say 3 rounds?
3 rounds. Someone else said 4, but I read it as 3.
I don't care if he's got 1. If it's in the back, and there's no indication that they were, if you've got, say, you've got 1 round in the side, which causes his body to spin, and I'm not talking about in just a reflex action, not the bullet itself making it, but there are certain dynamics of the body when it is shot, and the reaction to it can cause the body to turn away from the threat. And then if she put 2 more into his back, but it sounds to me as though we've got 3 rounds in his back. Now that she's going to be pretty hard to claim stand your ground or domestic violence, I believe, just based on that alone. And that would tell me that's why the prosecution moved forward with charges. And she's charged with a 2nd-degree felony, right? Not a 1st degree. So
she's going to win anywhere. It's Florida or Texas, I guess.
Yeah. Well, there's something about the elements of that caused them not to charge her with a 1st-degree felony. And I'm just saying here that as we hear more evidence coming out, her story starts to, in my view, starts to kind of diminish a little bit. And you have to put them all in there. You can't just come off with an emotional response that, oh yeah, this is what's happening, because that's just not the way you do.
By the way, we're being corrected by Paul saying, I don't know. She's saying he was not shot in the back. She shot at him 4 times, struck him twice, Ned is saying. But also, I think we, the 3 of us, might be getting a little confused too. What they're saying is it wasn't a defensive posture. So I don't know. Let's see here.
Well, okay.
Here we go.
So
Mr. Crowley, the ME testified and said the bullet hit him from the front. It was not from the back. Joel, please stop misreporting. So it was in the front, but there was no defensive stance. No defensive stance.
So then I would want to know where in the front. So if the prosecution is saying a defensive posture, they need to define that. What does that mean? So just because he's hit in the front, does that mean that it went through an arm and into his torso? I mean, I'd want to know what that means. So if we can throw out all the shot in the back stuff, because that's what we were told, throw that out. Now we have 1 round that hit him. She shot 4 times, blah, blah, blah. So it's critical to understand where the round hit and why the prosecution is categorizing that as a defensive posture. But that is big, and they're going to explain that, I would imagine, in the trial here about why that's the way that was. And if the ME's already testified, then that opinion may already be in the court record. So, but again, this is all these cases, you have to look, you can't look at pieces of them and come up with a conclusion. And I haven't come up with a conclusion in this one, just the more stuff we're being told now. So I think the only, if we're going to follow this case, what I'm looking forward to is the prosecution's cross-examination of her.
Yeah. That I believe began today as well. SGS Nation will let me know. I was in the car till right before this. By the way, Black Widower in the Republic, the Great Republic of Ireland. It is my partner Andrew's 44th birthday. Hooray. Happy birthday to Andrew. He could not pick a more beautiful, frightening, scary, intimidating woman than Black Widower, who only Phil Waters can intimidate me the way Black Widower does, with that James Bond-esque beauty. But there's a side of Black Widower where she can get wild, I think, and get and I don't know. I better stop talking. But Black Widow, I love you regardless, and I hope to maybe bring Phil and Scott to a UK Crime Con one of these years. By the way, someone was asking, our Donna Adelson, the COE has been doing. By the way, COE, I need that one other piece of video that we discussed that you probably forgot about. Now you're going to say your phone is dead and you can't get it, but it's fine. Try to get it if you can. We did a show about evidence against Donna Adelson. I'm going to get Phil and Scott caught up to speed on that trial because we're going to Tallahassee for that. But we're going to be doing not one, not two, but probably 3 Donna Adelson evidence shows next week because there is so much coming in on that, in addition to following this case. Let's play. I do have one last piece of sound here where I think we see some of these crocodile tears. Lindsay Shea, despite the verbal abuse that I'm taking at the hands of everyone in chat, saying, Joel, you're doing great. Thank you, Lindsay. Appreciate that. Here we go. Here's I love these two men like they're my uncle and my brother. 2 great guys. Here we go. Here's the sound.
He was standing in the doorway. His face was red. Like the veins were bulging in his neck. The way he was looking at me, it didn't even look like Doug. His eyes were...
Did he yell anything at you?
He said, "You're fucking done."
And what does he do at that point?
I held the gun like in front of me and I said, "Stop." And he like turned and he got into this like a fighting stance. I got low and he started like moving his arms and his hands around. And he was making these like jerking motions.
Phil Waters, got to defer to you, having investigated 400 plus homicides. Your reaction to this reaction?
You're talking about the emoting?
Yeah, I see a lot of Alec Murdoch here who was crying on the stand with no tears.
What I don't see here prominently is I don't see any snot. Mm-hmm. And there's no tears, and I'm just making observations here. I don't, if I were seeing this in the interview room, I would note to myself that this is not a sincere emotion at that time. And I don't know. I just don't, the meter's not kicking over to a true emoting moment. I think she's trying to get there, and but she's not quite making it. So, this part of it, I'm not convinced that this is a true showing of emotion based on what she's describing.
I'm going to agree with Phil. I think this looks feigned, F-E-I-G-N-E-D. I'm just not buying it. Sherry's News just looked up. The medical examiner said Douglas's cause of death was a gunshot wound to the chest that damaged his lungs and caused bleeding inside his chest. Followed by Black Widow in Ireland. You make being sober almost bearable, STS fam. Got to get to Ireland. I'd like to go with Phil and Scott and just drink Guinness for 2 straight weeks. Come out of there wearing 370 pounds. Rusty, Phil, I don't know how you feel about this. Joel, I want to live next door to Phil. This world is crazy. It's all STS's fault for hooking me in. First thing I'm doing is running behind Phil if anything goes crazy. Play 10 more seconds of this and get Scott's response.
He said, "You're fucking done."
what does he do at that point?
I held the gun like in front of me, and I said, "Stop!" And he like turned and he got into this like a fighting stance.
Duffster, I'd like to say that I believe her. I don't. If I'm a jury, I'm starting to have real concerns about how I'm going to deliberate when it comes to that time.
Yeah, these are tough, right? It's the jury with or without some sort of experiencing or experience of understanding bodily cues, and is somebody lying to me or not, right? They are there to judge the evidence. So yeah, take the gunshots to the back out of the equation. That puts it back into, okay, let's have another day of testimony and see where we're going with it. I would imagine that's exactly what the jury is doing. Everything relies upon her. That's where, like Phil said earlier, I would love to see the tape. I would love to see the recording of moments after, right? This is probably within a few hours of what her statement is, and is it consistent to what is being on the stand. Now, with that being said, regardless, this is the most traumatic event of her life, most traumatic, and the memory is often taken a back seat. So I'm always leery when somebody is able to get into detail with language. So the fact that I would be more to what she is seeing. My God, this thing was coming at me, and based upon everything you've heard before, prior gunshots and whatnot, I just let loose. I don't know how many times I shot. I don't know what the hell he said. I would rather see that as opposed to she seems almost too detailed about he said you're fucking done. I'm less believing of that, because I believe the traumatic event, her eyes are going, she is seeing, she is leveling in. She did. I raised a gun. So, single-handedly, typically when somebody is going to be recounting a very, very traumatic event, they're going to get into what took place. And then be like, I don't know what was said. All I know is what was coming at me. And so I'm and she does say like it's like, well, what I'm not, I don't like it when somebody says that. And that's talking to somebody without going through a traumatic event. Committed a crime, tell me what you've done. And there's usually a process of deny, but I get to see what the body's going through, to the point of, okay, now's the time, I've accepted it. Now let's discuss it. And it's a common sense. It's a trail, and or a journey. You're watching somebody go through the emotions of denying and then letting loose. So I would love to see, and was it played, the recording of her telling law enforcement what she did and how she did it, and what he said or didn't say, and what was his, and the fact that she says he took a what was, did she say he took a particular posture?
Oh, well, it was a defensive. He did not take a defensive posture, but right before this, he took the corner of a box, and like jabbed it up into her, like rib area, which
right. And that was all that day of bodily contact, and leading into her, I guess, fleeing into this bedroom.
Yeah.
That's
I was going to say, people are getting upset with me.
Well,
at the moment,
so we've heard a lot of different things here. I'm going to always go back to the evidence. These claims that she's making about him jamming a box into her right side and scratching her and that kind of thing, do we have pictures of that? Do we have anything in evidence that indicates that what she is saying has been verified, that it's corroborated by the evidence? So, and we don't know that, or I don't know that. So I just, several of the things she sent me, we can all sit here, you know, and those that want to believe her and feel sorry for her, that's fine. But I'm just telling you, as we always do, we look at these things with an unemotional content, and it's looked at as detectives, as investigators. Where does the evidence lead? Right now, I've got just so many questions about the things that she has said, and are those things backed up by the evidence? Are they corroborated by the evidence? Are there pictures of these alleged physical contact that she had? I'd like to hear the 911 call.
Yeah.
Who made the 911 call? Her? I mean, I'd like to hear what that is. I'd like to see the interview with her. I'd like to see the difference between the interview with her and now her testimony on the stand.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, we're remembering specific, like Scott said, we're now remembering specific things that were said. Is that what came out in the original interview with her? So there's a lot of things going on here that we're not privy to, just based on her testimony.
Yeah,
and people are getting all of those things.
People are getting upset with me. Yvonne, remember Gabby Petito in the van with the police? They believed him that she was the abuser. Good call. And then you got Angie here saying, Joel, quit saying crocodile tears. I've been exactly where she is. And he, meaning the person that I guess was abusing this woman, Angie, was a cop. And Maui Swift, tired of victims being bad guys. I don't know if she's taking the position that he's the victim here. I don't know, but people are getting, I mean, it's obviously I'll say this. I have no doubt that she was abused by this guy, and it was a super dysfunctional, screwy relationship. My point is, I'm not believing her necessarily in this video. I know that's controversial in and of itself, but I think it's what we've been discussing here, which is at the moment in time that she had.
We don't know what the abuse was, and I don't know that I've read anywhere. Is there any documentation, like official police reports about any of this anywhere? So again, we're getting one side of a story. Some of the stuff, a statement of facts, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're being told the truth. Yeah, he shot a pistol into the ceiling. I mean, that's a fact, but we don't know the truth about it. I mean, I'm just saying this conjecture of things that are being told in piecemeal and coming to a conclusion is not the way you conduct a homicide investigation. So for those people that want to take sides based on this, you know what? I mean, that's fine. Have those opinions, but you're not looking at it objectively. And we are.
Yeah.
So that's the big difference.
Well, here's Dirty Dog. So tired of victim blaming. So here goes. She didn't cry appropriately. I'm just not buying the tears. But Scott Duffey, how do you respond to this comment that she did not cry appropriately?
And I think it's fair with the past domestic violent cases that we've discussed on air. Phil and I are trained investigators, and we're not jurors. So I feel bad for jurors who have to make decisions based upon, hey, I'm not sure if she's telling the truth or not telling the truth. So give me some more physical evidence so I don't have to rely upon that. With regards to this, we are looking this in the very moment of, we're not negating one word. Believe her at her word. Let's just say, for argument's sake, believe her at her word. The judge has obviously allowed that testimony to come in. So thereby he's saying, I believe there's enough that it has happened. So put all that she is a victim of previous domestic violence, and she is a victim. put even aside that she might have reciprocated in some regard. Put that all aside. What we are talking about is a murder. Someone's life is taken, and was that life taken at the time where she, even if and this is where perception, if she absolutely believes in her heart and her mind, and she's able to articulate, I feared for my life at the moment, that if I didn't shoot him, because I got a gun, if I didn't shoot him, that he was coming in a way to kill me. Not, I want to argue, or that he was going to kill me. So that regard, yes, you have to, the physical evidence comes in, it says he shot in the front. Is he shot 10 feet away, 15 feet away, 5 feet away? Is he shot from across the house? And all that does take a place, because you must judge. You must judge. Law enforcement must judge her mindset. Did she believe she was about to die and had absolutely no other recourse, and so thereby took his life? And it, whether it be domestic or not, she took his life. And was she in the right to take his life? And law enforcement, prosecution together have decided, we've heard her story and there's not enough to support it. And so thereby the case is getting presented and she has to go on the stand. And human emotion, you can make those judgments as a juror to say, is she lying to us or is she not lying to us? Because I don't think I see tears, or I see tears, but I don't think she's acting in the way that I have. And some of those jurors might have the very same experiences that some of the commentators are revealing to us. Hey, I've been in that situation and it's bad. And victims act differently. Those are all true. However, the moment of her taking the gun, grabbing the gun, as opposed to out the door to flee or to a phone and dial 911, is that her only recourse? Ultimately, backed up against a wall, I need to take his life because he's about to take mine. And that's what we are left with as investigators, to make that judgment that he might have been a very, very bad man to her and to his previous wives. But was he so bad that at that moment he was about to kill her? That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, real quick, Phil, real quick. The channel F here. This was the first time.
Hang on a second. Scott just caused a question in my mind to pop out, and I don't want to forget it.
Go for it.
And he was talking about, was on her. So
the Big Island. You're breaking up, Phil.
Yeah. This was
such a good question too. Phil, you're breaking up. You're going to come back in 1 second. You're like pixelating. Hawaii is part of America, but is it really? I love you, Catherine. Phil, you're totally broken up, so you're gonna come back. I know you are, but right now you're frozen and broken like a bone. But Scott Duffster, this was the first time she was told what happened. She never told anyone what happened that night. Hang on, Phil might be coming back. The neighbor called 911. So there we go. Phil, I think you're back now. You were breaking up with your Big Island Wi-Fi.
Well, my point was, when Scott talked about, was he up on her, that kind of thing. The question in my mind was, where was she when she fired the weapon? Where was he? If they're up on within 2 feet, there should be stippling on the clothing, stippling possibly on his skin. If it was a contact wound and it's going to be right up pressed against him, and there should be burned material, there should be charring in the wound and on the clothing. If he's shot, if he's shot and she's more than 2 feet away, there will be none of that, which in my mind is going to be, okay, so if you're at a distance, and that's going to be one of my questions for her, where was he when you shot him? And if he was 15 feet, if he was across the freaking room, that's not an immediate threat. At least in my mind, it would be, well, why did you shoot him? Why didn't you get on the phone and call 911? Why didn't you flee? Why didn't you just leave the house and go to the neighbor? So those are the questions that I would be asking in that interview with her based on the evidence that I'm looking at. So there's a whole lot of stuff here going on that people are coming to conclusions about not knowing all of the evidence.
Yeah. We're going to get to another story in just 1 minute. I'm just going to round Ned Smith here, ever the voice of reason. This is what I'm trying to get across, but not articulating well. You have to look at the evidence at the time in that moment where she shot him. I have no doubt that this guy had major issues. Knocking out a dog ain't done by a normal person. Even Ned Smith said, if you touch her dog, you better watch, your boys better watch out, Phil. She wasn't directing it directly at you, but you get the point. Scott Duffey, there's a guy named Detective Chris Gillum with the Manatee County Sheriff's Office. He took the stand. He said that he experienced the weirdest thing he's ever experienced with Ashley Benefield. He said, in my 12 years of doing this, I had never had anybody ask me to arrest anybody in front of a judge inside the courtroom. She made a comment. This was during I think a custody hearing, something to the effect of, if the judge sees you arrest him, it'll help me keep my baby, the detective said. When the detective told her no multiple times, he said that Ashley Benefield's demeanor switched. Quote, her tone turned from the crying to very aggressive. And she says, you will effing arrest him in front of the judge, and I will make sure you do it. She let out like a screech or a high-pitched scream, and she says, I will do whatever I have to do to keep my baby, you effing effer. Scott Duffey, I mean, this is witness testimony from a detective. Does it change how you feel about her guilt or innocence?
Not how I'm not how I feel about her guilt or innocence, but the fact that the judge allowed that to come in. Oh, I like that. The fact that the judge allowed that to come in goes to show that they're using a prior statement to impeach her as telling her story as being truthful, and so that goes to show that hey, we find this relevant to the case at hand, that she can change on a dime, that she is not this victim of victims of domestic violence, though she might have been a victim of domestic violence. Just saying, at that moment in this case, what she said and how she said it was so impactful on the police officer that it becomes relevant to, here we are, however long that happened prior to the death, that it is something to be used to impeach her. That's ultimately what it comes down to. And the fact that I saw a comment that there is no recording, a police recording of an interview, because she did not provide one. That's also telling to me, when you do hear a well-crafted, and Phil has said, and this is the way it is, prosecution witnesses and defense witnesses are always given that testimony preparation. So if this is the first time she's providing that and has not done it before, that makes me less likely to say it is truthful, right? That's ultimately what it comes down to. Is she being truthful in her statement? And if it's the first time on the stand it's being provided, I shot him because he was about to do this to me. If so then they're allowing prior statements to impeach her. That's what, it's still going to come down to. Jury's going to have to say, is it 50-50? Is it, or are they clearly saying, oh, I find that they brought a good case, and so thereby more weighing to the prosecution case, and then to not believe her defense story. She can be truthful in every aspect, but then the killing part, that statement, if I did it because of this, and if that's not truthful, then yes, I find it less likely. That's all. I find it less likely at the moment that the first time we are hearing of a defense statement is because it's been crafted for her, as opposed to, I want to tell the police, I want to tell everybody at the moment, he was about to kill me and this is what happened. That's more truthful, in my opinion.
Ida Shaw, JD, I feel like I wasted 4 years of my life and over $100,000 in loans when I could have just gone to YouTube law. I have this like hankering to go to law school now that I'm middle-aged. I think it'd be interesting. I would have hated it before, but now I think I would love it. I wonder how that would work out in my life. I would only do it if Scott Duffey did it with me. We would just have to leave our families for 3 years. I think we could both get into Harvard. I'd get a 3 on my LSATs. Scott would get a 5.
But I like the YouTube version.
Yeah, I like the YouTube version. I kind of want to go to law school, though. Get me away from my kids for a little bit. Phil, everybody wants you to know that there's no stippling. And also someone else said, Joel, tell Phil she was trapped by him in the room. Let's end this story with this, and then a quick few more minutes on other stuff. Phil Waters, how does this end? In an acquittal, guilty verdict, mistrial? What do you think here? Give us your projection. Make a guess, Phil.
I never make predictions. We're not seeing what the jury is seeing. The jury is seeing all of the evidence. They're hearing all the arguments, and I just don't do it. I don't make predictions. I have my own thought about the way it's going to. The possibilities are, but in terms of offering a prediction,
well, we'll do this later on. I'm going to text Phil. I'm going to say, what are you thinking? And he'll tell me, and then I'll post it on Instagram. But go ahead, Phil.
No, I'm just saying I'm never going to do that. I'm not going to do it. Not going to do it.
Scott Duffey, are you going to do it?
Yeah, not especially with this one. I'll go back and forth, debate whether she may or may not be telling the truth, or this, but I couldn't tell you. I still couldn't tell you, just based on what you've said and seeing her statement, if she killed him in self-defense. I don't know enough, so I couldn't.
By the way, Alice Ryder Feld, who's a friend of the show and an attorney here in Miami, she said that, and I don't know the law, but they were not living in the same home. They were living apart, and she's wondering, or I'm wondering, but she posed the question, doesn't that affect the whole self-defense? Like, she invited him over. I have no idea. She's the lawyer. I'm not, but I thought it was an interesting question. It wasn't like they were living together. I don't know what kind of impact that would have. Sherry's News says, she said on the stand, she tried to flee the home, but he stood in front of the door trying to reason with her. She headed to her bedroom where the gun was, picked up the gun, and when she saw him, she shot him. I mean, that's my point, is you just can't pick up a gun and shoot and kill someone unless you're in immediate danger. The jury is 7 women, 2 men, 3 are alternates. This is interesting. Only 6 jurors will decide. We could get a verdict Monday and or Tuesday. I think we're going to do this story again on Monday. And now I'm going to play a very disturbing news story. It's Friday. Why leave happy? Let's see this. I'm sure Phil and Scott will both have stuff to say about this. Let's watch this together.
possible intruder outside her home. Body camera video shows deputies responding to Massey's house. Shots were fired after she picked up what appears to be a pot of boiling water from her stove. The family says Massey was unarmed. The former deputy, Sean Grayson, has pleaded not guilty to charges, including first-degree murder. He was arrested and remains in custody. Now, new original reporting from NBC News finds Grayson worked for 6 law enforcement agencies since 2020. That's according to Illinois law enforcement records, and even had his own previous run-ins with the law. NBC News national reporter Janelle Griffith is behind this new reporting. So, Janelle, walk us through what exactly you found out about Grayson's past.
So, yes, he actually had pleaded guilty twice to driving under the influence of alcohol, once in 2015 and again in 2016. And one of those times overlapped with when he was enlisted in the Army, and he was released shortly thereafter. He was discharged. And he also, I found at one of those departments, had been disciplined for striking a deer in a police chase that sheriff's office had said was his fault. They said that he had violated a number of department policies in the chase, and he had also faced 2 unsubstantiated complaints by 2 citizens, filed by 2 citizens.
So pretty remarkable findings. And I imagine, Janelle, the family has thoughts about this. What have we heard from the Masseys, as well as their lawyer, who, of course, is prominent civil rights attorney Ben Crump?
Yes. So Ben and Sonia's family are saying, why was this man allowed to work in law enforcement at all? They said he left the Army under questionable circumstances, and he had been pleaded guilty to 2 DUIs himself. So was he the most suitable person to be in a uniform? And they're calling for accountability. And they believe that had he not been a part of the sheriff's office, that Sonia might still be alive.
That's the report. Bill Waters, to you first. We're not showing the video because it's brutal, the actual video, but needless to say, he goes in there and basically just pulls his way. She's threatening with a pot of hot water. Phil, your thoughts on this very, very disturbing case?
Well, I've seen the video, and it always disturbs me when a life is taken by law enforcement and it's unnecessary. In this particular case, having watched the entire video from beginning to end, the body cam, their contact with her, and then how it escalates. But I didn't see anything in the body cam video that to me justified drawing that weapon. Given what she was alleged to have used as a weapon, a pot of boiling water. And that is a scene where whatever the circumstances were, lack of training, lack of the proper attitude to be a cop, don't know what the background is there other than what we've seen here with this individual. But I can tell you in the department I came from, we had CIT training, crisis intervention training. That is one of the scenes that's documented that, in my view, and if I were the homicide detective working this scene, which is what we would be doing, these are called officer-involved shootings, and we would be in there working that scene. And the evidence just on the video itself, that was a situation where the officer should have de-escalated that situation verbally and realized that this woman was in some kind of crisis, and the boiling water thing, I believe, could have been minimized, and she would have put the pot down if that had been handled correctly. So there is no, in my mind, having worked officer-involved shootings and looking at the evidence of this video, I don't know that there's any other way. Now, I know that I'm sure they took him down there, and the other guy, the other detective or deputy that was with him, took him down and took statements, is what we would have done as well, get their perspective, walk through it with us. Then we look at the body cam video, and he's got to, because he's used deadly force, he has to articulate why he used deadly force. And I know when I took those officers' statements, I was very specific about what did you see, what did they do that caused you to do what you did, to take the action you took, which means that this I was in fear of my life does not work in an officer-involved shooting. It used to for a number of years. But I can tell you, my 23 years in homicide, I never allowed that statement to be made. I wanted to know why you were in fear and be very specific about it. What did they do? What did you do? Why did you respond to what they did in the way you did it? So in this particular case, just based on the video, bad decision. There's a use of force continuum that has been around. I've taught use of force classes that starts with presence and ends in deadly force. And you have everything in between that elevates the force that's being used. Verbal presence, verbal commands, soft control techniques, hard control techniques, pepper spray, chemical use, batons, impact weapons, and runs up to deadly force. So, jumping from verbal commands, verbal contact to deadly force based on that, bad decision. And given the guy's history, the DWIs, that kind of thing, that's cause for concern. But the two unsubstantiated, unsustained complaints from citizens, that really means nothing to me. That happens a lot. And what that means is, at least for HPD, is if you have a non-sustained complaint, it means that it could not be proven either way. It couldn't be proven that you did it, couldn't be proven that you didn't do it. So two, what I think they're calling them unsustained complaints, that means nothing. What concerns me about this guy is that if he's worked for six agencies in 4 years?
6 agencies, in 4 years. It's crazy.
That's a problem. That, to me, that is a huge red flag.
Yeah, what's going on?
Somebody in the process of hiring that guy didn't do a proper background, and I'm assuming these are going to be small agencies.
Yeah, small in Illinois.
Within the same area, relative area. So, and this happened, it's unfortunate, but this does happen. I won't say a lot, but it does happen where you have these smaller departments. They're all around the same general area. And you get these guys, my term for them were gypsy cops. They bounce from agency to agency. They get to one agency and something happens there and they, says, maybe you need to go on down the road. And they do. They go on down the road to the next one. And then somebody, when they're doing the background, they either call that agency before them, and the agency, fearful of some sort of privacy stuff, won't tell them the truth because they're worried about getting sued. I'm telling you, some of this stuff is so incestuous, it just burns me up. People just tell the freaking truth. Why is that so hard? If this guy is not a suitable employee, then say it and articulate why. But this guy here, this horrible tragedy never should have happened. And again, it breaks my heart when I see something like this happen, because there are those with the agenda that will take this isolated incident and they will turn it and cast it upon 750,000 law enforcement officers from the local level to the federal level and say we're all demons because of this one person who, at least looking at this, never should have put a badge on.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Linda Mitchell, he should be convicted. Worst part is he told her to turn the stove off, and that's why she was over there, followed by a similar comment. He told her to take the pot off the stove. Scott Duffey, I watched this video, really depressing. I mean, I just can't see any jury saying that he had an imminent threat from this person. She called him to the home because she thought there was a prowler. I think she's a schizophrenic, so she's got mental health issues relating to, that are make her paranoid. Someone in here said that in Nashville, in Tennessee, with these types of calls, oftentimes they'll bring a therapist along, which seems like that could be dangerous too. But Scott Duffey, do you see any? Rich Buddy, who is in the chat, is arguing with everyone, saying that this officer had every right, but there's always one of those. I don't see it. Scott Duffey, do you see any jury here of this guy's peers saying he had a right to basically murder this woman in cold blood because of the pot of water?
Yeah, I didn't see it. So I was actually, and so now I'm going to educate myself and go see it, because I'm listening to Phil, and I usually do not get into a police officer's mind and second guess, right? I don't do that. However, just based on what you showed, I don't see anything. I'm thinking in the next second or two, she's obviously at the stove, picks up the water, and from what I'm seeing and the distance that he's at, I don't see any threat to his life or to his partner's life, to her life. I just don't. So I understand what Rich Buddy is saying with regards to what's a threat. Well, I've been in many homes, and totally agree with especially as a police officer, you don't have to have a doctor's note to say somebody is going through a mental crisis. You know it, you see it, and you should immediately start responding in the sense that things can go bad real quick. And so your language changes, your demeanor changes, you are de-escalating what you know for that person to be going through, while creating noticeable distance to where, if you're being called into somebody's house and you realize quickly, oh, I don't think they're all there, they're going through some sort of episode, that's a check to yourself to say, okay, things they're not that bad. Let's calm things down and talk to that person in a way that language and communication are very good tools in de-escalation. And people say things that are where, I'm going to say the word just for that are crazy, but in the mind of a police officer to know, I'm not threatened by that word of, I've had people, I'm going to do this to you. Okay. But there's nothing, no action there. And even if there's a boiling pot of water, I'd be like, no, okay, don't, you're going to get burned just for picking it up. I would, you say things, and so thereby the communication continues on to minutes and minutes and minutes of banter going back and forth where there's no threat. And definitely, so I not seeing it unless something changed just from what I saw. I was like, are you showing us the right video? I don't see anything that rose to the level of somebody had to be shot. So change the video or something. But so I'm going to go and educate myself and watch the full video. But
there you go. We're going to race through a couple other stories just because I took the time to pick them out. This one will go back to Scott. He is not only a voice of reason, but he's also an ineligible bachelor because he's married, but he is the sex symbol of STS. There's a woman named Fabiola Thomas, Scott Duffey, 39 years old. She's on a dating app. She meets a man named Antonio Wilson. There's a way to defriend the guy on the dating app. The day that she defriends him, she says, keep your ring. I'm not your woman. I never was. Stop claiming me. And then she unfriends him. And that very same day winds up dead. The bigger story, obviously, this does not surprise Phil or Scott because nothing does. Cautionary tale, STS singles. We talk about it often. A lot of women, members of STS. What would you say to them? How dangerous are some of these dating apps? How careful do you have to be in vetting? Phil is shaking his head. Can meet a lot of crazy people on these dating apps. What do you say? What do you say to the women in Here we go. STS singles right here. Lindsay Shea. How do you vet someone to make sure you're not going to end up with a lunatic?
Yeah. So with that, had she developed a relationship with him or never?
Some little relationship. Yeah. I mean, they were talking, I believe.
But no physical
I
interaction.
To be honest, I don't know. But she does mention keeping a ring, so maybe it given her some kind of jewelry. So maybe it was a little more involved than we thought.
Yeah. I mean, regardless, somebody you know when you're before somebody, beyond whatever attractions, whatnot, dating apps and often especially if these months go by where there's no interaction, they are often used for fraud, and you can't tell anything about an individual, especially if you're sucked in by the word and you don't know if you're being defrauded, you don't know if you're being stalked, you don't know any of that because you cannot put eyes on somebody and get a good gauge of a human being. So I'm always very leery, but I'm also very aware of teaching many college kids and my own kids that dating apps are a thing of the day, and so they are now for all ages. But I can tell you the fraud are immense. The billions and billions of dollars that are lost. I've spoken to so many victims. I cannot even begin to understand how they fell victim. So it's and as an investigator, to still not understand that mindset is bothers me. But then beyond that, to the point of violence, to where so many people hide behind that, knowing that people are sucked in by the word. And so you do not know what a person is capable of. So I just say, don't check common sense at the door, whatever, and get to know somebody. And people are dangerous, period. And they do not make themselves known when it's all behind a screen.
Phil Waters, FedEx driver in North Carolina. He's driving his route. He sees a cute little French bulldog. He decides he's going to take this bulldog, even though it was not his French bulldog. Sure enough, sure as the day is long, the dog named Tori, he leaves him in his hot truck. The dog dies. Guy has now been arrested for theft. He lost his job. Horrible story. Hate talking about dead dogs more than anything in the world. Maybe there was a chance that he thought this dog was lost. The dog escaped. I don't even know. How do you react to a story like this? Because maybe he thought this dog was lost, but now he's fired and being charged for theft, grand larceny. Does he deserve it?
Well, whether he stole it or not, it really doesn't matter to me. The fact that he was stupid enough to leave the dog in his truck closed up, causing its death, that's the idiot part of this whole thing. So these people that, whatever dog they own or they pick up and they leave it in a freaking car. It's just like these people that leave their babies in these cars. I'm like, what are you thinking? Did you forget this living thing that's with you in the car, and you're so self-absorbed that you get out of it and you lock it up? And the temperatures inside these cars get up, they're over 100 degrees. It's whether it's a baby, a child, or a dog. I mean, that's the part that stands out here. And should he be charged with theft? He should be if he stole the dog. So, and I don't know if there's any other, statute that would have to do with the dog being killed in the truck, but I'm certain the owners of the dog certainly have a basis for a civil suit against this driver.
Anybody who messes with Fred or Ethel, or Poppy or Nugget or Pearl, they better protect their boys if they're men, because I'm coming at them with a bat to the boys. Abby Tahaha, Barley made it. Hi, Joel. Hi, Dad. Hi, Scott. I'm catching you guys before Friday night smash. Happy belated birthday, Joel. I don't know what that means. I met my hubby on Tinder. My real dad knew him before me, though. There you go. He seems like a good guy, too. Abby, Vonda K, gifting 5 surviving the Survivor memberships. And we come to the last story of the day. Chicken wings. I got to come to Phil Waters on this. Chicken wings advertised as boneless cannot be guaranteed to be completely bone-free. This decision was ruled on by a divided Ohio Supreme Court. It's amazing that there are such incredibly hard-pressed, urgent matters that they are taking up. And this is one of them, about boneless chicken. In 2016, Michael Berkheimer and his wife, they visited Wings on Brookwood in Butler County, Ohio. And according to his 2017 lawsuit against the restaurant and its chicken suppliers, Berkheimer ordered boneless wings. He cut each wing into 2 or 3 pieces. And while eating his third, he felt a piece of meat go down the wrong pipe. He unsuccessfully tried to clear his throat in the restroom. Days later, his fever spiked and he struggled to eat. He went to the emergency room where a doctor found a thin chicken bone in his esophagus. According to Berkheimer's lawsuit, he claimed the bone tore his esophagus, leading to a bacterial infection and further medical issues. The article goes on for another 20 pages. But this went all the way to the Supreme Court of Ohio. Boneless chicken wings do not have to be boneless. Phil Waters, what say you? Look at this. This is Mia. This is Mia Wallace, by the way.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Used to be I Am Not T-Pain. I Am Not T-Pain is taking a hiatus. This is Mia Wallace. Phil Waters. What are we an overly litigious society, Phil?
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
Would you sue? Would you sue over chicken wings, Phil?
I see where the guy has a viable suit against the establishment for the physical damage that he incurred, but he's suing them because the boneless chicken should have no bones in it, right? That's
correct.
The basis. I read this.
Look at this. Black Witter says one of the most American things ever. Just be proud. I am proud to be an American. You can sue over anything here. Phil?
I'm just saying, I mean, this happens, right? I mean, you go in and you order a fish fillet, and sometimes every once in a while, a bone has slipped in there. The purpose of a fillet is to fillet it off of the bones, out of the bone, away from the bones, right? Sometimes they slip in there. So, I mean, I guess
this is reminding me of a story, by the way.
The guy swallowed a freaking chicken bone and it should have been boneless. That's what it was advertised as. But stuff happens, man. Grow up. So the fact that the Ohio Supreme Court, I was just aghast at the fact that they're even considering this. Why some lower court judge allowed this to go forward. why they didn't just say, "You're an idiot. Sorry it happened to you." I would be curious to know if the business paid any of his medical expenses based on their insurance. But this suing about boneless chickens, I mean, that's just bizarre to me. This guy obviously has a lot of time on his hands. So, I mean, and what was the ultimate? Was it? It's a civil suit, right? So was he trying to get money from the establishment? I'm not.
I think he was suing the establishment, but then he went on to sue the chicken suppliers and
he's suing everybody.
He sued Wings on Brookwood, wherever that is.
Yeah, which is what they do. The shotgun approach, boom, 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 and all that.
Yeah.
So, but I just think it's nonsensical. And we got this stuff, way back when, decades ago, when the woman spilled McDonald's coffee on her lap, and it was deemed too hot and won a bunch of money. That's what started this kind of nonsense. And do we take out the factor that once you get it in your hand, you're responsible for where it goes. And if it goes in your lap, that's your fault. That's not the fact that the coffee is hot, because you expect the coffee is going to be hot. So I don't know. I mean, it's
Ned Smith has breaking news. She says he's suing the chicken.
The actual chicken that the bones came from. Well, I imagine that chicken's been consumed, so he's probably not going to get a whole lot out of that, right?
Yeah, not a lot.
He ate the chicken. So he ate the very subject that he is suing?
Yes, there you go. It's all look at this.
He's got his just desserts. That's his compensation. He ate the chicken.
Wow, I can't believe how long we went today. We started off with worry and angst. We ended up on chicken wings. We cover it all here. Some people screaming at the three of us to watch the trial before we talk about it, to which I say, buzz off. I did watch some of the trial. I'm just not that smart. And Phil and Scott actually have real lives and jobs. So, but they were somewhat informed, and it's Friday, so we're not buttoned up the way we are every other day. So I say buzz right off. Paula says, dang, Phil and Scott are looking fire. Someone else says, preach, Phil. Totally agree. By the way,
I don't know. That emoji has got a tear and a tongue sticking out of it, and it's red face. So I'm not even sure what that means. What does that mean?
I don't really know, but Nick Brennan is actually Abby Tahaha's husband. Happy belated birthday, Joel. Love watching you guys with Abby Tahaha most days, but if you guys get in the way of SmackDown, not Smash, we'll have words. There you go. You can take a shot at my boys, if that's the case. We've gone way over our unallotted time because we're not allotted any time. I once dated a guy from a dating app. We went out 3 times, and then he was arrested for murder.
There's good stories and bad stories. That's it.
Yeah. Oh, Joel, we love you anyway. Ignorance can be corrected. Yes, it can. Ooh, she's saying it means you're hot, Phil. I didn't see Black Widow's comment. Sorry, I just clicked off of that.
Okay.
Means you're hot. Phil Waters, how does your wife handle all the attention that you get from this show, Phil Waters? Is there an ounce of jealousy that oozes from her, or not at all? She knows that you're a faithful husband.
I had been married to my bride for almost 42 years.
42. I'll translate. You're breaking up again, Phil.
I've been married to my bride for 42 years.
Yes.
And she doesn't have any concerns that I'm being distracted. So there you go. And I don't call her Saint Sandra for nothing.
Yeah, I heard almost all of that. But you know what's funny? When you tell someone that their Wi-Fi is breaking up, they continue to talk because they think their Wi-Fi is perfect, but it's not. We got to get Phil like a hard line there in the Big Island. Scott Duffey, Phil will come back. He's coming back. I can see him. But Scott Duffey, please lead us out of this very lengthy show this weekend. You're back, Phil. We'll get back to you in a minute. But Scott Duffey, I don't know what to tell you. It's the dog days of summer. I actually had a book signing in Miami last night and unexpectedly had a great showing. But the 3 friends that I have here, they're all out of town. I thought there was going to be just Carmen, I, and my kids, but people showed up. It's a time of year where there's not much going on. Oh, thank you, Kay Falter, at Books and Books. I appreciate that. Books and Books, probably the best bookstore in South Florida. Scott Duffey, any words at all of advice, wisdom, comfort on this Friday? We will take it.
It's going to be a great weekend. So everybody, all your comments are good. They're all just words and opinions from two.
Are the Phillies still winning?
Well, that's a good question because I
haven't seen Philly shoulder surgery.
They haven't been on fire, so I think they've been struggling, but I think they're getting back.
Have you been in communication with PSS, Philadelphia shoulder surgeon?
Yeah, shoulder doc has been pretty busy. She's surgery more than her surgery days, so she's got.
You know what? She's a young buck, and she should be working hard. So I don't have any empathy at all for her. Phil Waters, you're back, fully pixelated. People are asking, of course, how Nugget is holding up.
I think Nugget went upstairs.
Joel, you ask Scott a question, then interrupt him while he's answering. That's my MO.
That's it.
That's it. Scott Duff. I'm sorry, Phil Waters. I looked at you and I said Scott's name. Phil, they want to know if you're paying your internet bill. We started with angst about bills. Are you paying your internet bill?
Of course, but we have some issues with our carrier from a lot of different angles. So
let me ask you a question. You're a very OCD, rigid guy, kind of like myself. I assume you use online bill pay at this point in your life. Oh, by the way, we're doing an Ask Me Anything, only Patreon members, Sunday at 12 p.m. Maybe Phil or Scott will jump on to say hello. We don't know. But Phil, first question, do you do online bill pay?
Yes.
And secondly, even though you do online bill pay, do you go through all your paper bills to make sure that all of the online auto pays are accurate and correct? In other words, do you still sit down the way my dad would sit down every month to pay the bills? You still do that?
Oh, yeah. Because if it's not written down, it didn't happen. So I make sure that the old good paper noted. But what I have been doing lately is I have been pulling up the PDF files and making the notes on those, and then I save them in a document folder.
I still don't know how to make I'm not joking. I don't know how to create a folder on a computer. I had this weird thing with computers. Scott and I are almost the same exact age, and I started with Pascal in high school, a language I don't even think exists, and I've always had a fear of technology. I don't know what it is, but I just don't like to use I use them all constantly, but I just don't know how to do anything. Like I don't know how to create a folder. So there you go. Lavender Blue says, Joel, you have not followed this trial and you are stating wrong information.
So noted.
Yeah. Lavender, I apologize. You might want some lavender navel spray to soothe yourself. It works for my anxiety. I've never used it, but it'll work for your anger issues. I'm sorry. Bella, there you go. I think that we've run our course. Scott Duffey, there was a comment about the Phillies that I'm trying to find. And then my dad just called me about the Phillies complaining about the umpire. Scott, is that something you would do? Would you call your son and just start yelling about the umpire who made a bad call?
No.
There you go. That's it. Look at this. If only this. See, the COE always says one thing to me. She always says it's your settings. If I ask anything about why I can't figure something out, she goes, it's your settings. So I have a real fear of computers. Lindsay Shea just breaking it down, though. Right click, new folder. Never knew. Did you know that, Scott Duffey?
I'm writing it down.
But Scott, when you When you were at the FBI, were you good about keeping everything on your work computer, or did you have any trepidation about that?
Now, see, that's a show in and of itself of how backwards the FBI was with regards to catching up and compute everything.
Did you use encyclopedias?
So when I first came on the job, we were being told, hey, there's going to be this electronic communication, but it had to be printed and sent through the mail.
How is anybody watching this still? That's my question on every Friday. How's anyone still watching this? Phil Nugget is not there. Anyway, I think it is time to finally say goodbye.
Oh, she's upstairs.
She's upstairs.
She's upstairs.
Phil, since we're going on and on, what are you doing? Is tonight you do Bible study on Friday nights? And I always get confused between this and Houston.
Yeah, tonight is a Bible study, and tomorrow will be pizza night.
Oh, look at this. 2 people in a row. Blackwater, it's your brain settings, followed by, I think the COE means your brain settings. So, Joel, my kids can use my computer way better than me. My kid, who's only 5, he uses my face to download whatever game apps he wants to play. And that's that. I think it is finally time. I'll say once again, I love these 2 men with all my heart. We're working on bigger and better things for 2025, even though 2024 is barely not even half over. And the grind continues. The anxiety persists, but I'm going to just take a deep breath of fresh, humid Miami air tonight and try to calm myself down. Love you, America. Love you, Hawaii, the Big Island. Love you, Wilmington, Delaware, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Canton, Massachusetts, Tampa, Florida, the Republic of Ireland, and last but not least, Tasmania.